Hi, I'm Dave Monty and welcome to my video series, Everything Villages. Today is part 3 of my series, Is the Villages Collapsing? It's not. But today we're going to cover the demand side and what the effect of the new generation coming in is going to have in the villages and the effect of the large baby boomer generation who possibly going to start moving out of the villages. So stay tuned. As always, before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. If you like this video, please hit like. If you like my channel, please consider subscribing. Both those actions help these videos reach more people, and I greatly appreciate it. Also, if you'd like a copy of my free 42-page guide, Buying and Selling a Home in the Villages, you can email me right here at davemontysales@gmail.com. I also have a nifty cost of living calculator / budgeting tool. If you'd like a copy of that, you can email me right here. Like I said in the introduction, we're going to talk about Gen X and how the shifting from the baby boomers to this new generation is going to affect the market. Now, I put the villages market here, but this is going to affect every retirement community out there because the demographics aren't different from what affects Adele Webb. Okay, so just keep this in mind in general when you're looking at any retirement community. Okay. Why does this matter? Well, the shifting of the generations affects both the supply side and the demand side. Okay, so let's talk about the supply side. If you have this massive group of retirees, as they're starting to age, they're going to be dumping more and more homes on the market. Okay, so the supplies will increase over time. We also have new construction here in the villages, and the villages is in a unique position because they're one of the largest retirement communities and they can throttle up and down their construction. Okay? The villages, or any retirement community, relies heavily on new retirees moving in. If the next generation is smaller, okay, compound that with a big group of people moving out, the net effect can be a little bit negative. Okay? The demand is also driven by demographics and social behaviors, which we will talk about in this video. So the baby boomer effect, very large generation, okay, the largest generation. They had strong pensions. They tended to retire a little bit earlier, and they really liked Florida as a retirement destination. Okay. The other effect that, again, I'll mention it, we just talked about it in the previous slide, is that this is a very large generation. A lot of them are going to be going on to the next stage, whether it's moving closer to family, whether it's going into assisted living. They're going to be dumping homes on the market at an accelerated pace. Here are the births by year. Okay. This is heavily correlated to when people retire. Currently, this is where we are. So we have some Gen Xers who are starting to retire. We also still have people, like I said, the switch between the boomers and Gen X is 1964. So we still have a pretty big chunk of people who are retiring at this point. Over time, this box shifts to the right. And there's a big difference in the number of people retiring, up over 4 million here. And down in a few years, you're going to be right here, okay, 3.5 million. That is a big percentage drop. Okay, so just something to keep in mind. There are also financial differences between the two. One of the bigger ones here, and again, we're talking about aggregate, not individuals. In general, the baby boomers have pensions, or many more pensions than Gen X does. That is an income that is predictable, that they can rely on, that they can make purchasing decisions about. Gen Xers relying much more heavily on 401ks, and they have to figure out how to turn that into income, whether it's annuities or not. But it is a little bit of a different model than the previous generation. They also have more debt, and they are retiring later because of uncertainty. What do I mean by uncertainty? We don't know if we're going to have Social Security or not in 10 years. Most likely we will, but that weighs heavily on the minds of people who are trying to plan for retirement. Okay? There's just a lot more uncertainty at this point. Okay? Now, some of the positives for the next generation coming in is that they rode a pretty healthy wave of home price appreciation over the last few years. It is a little bit offset because the pricing in the villages definitely appreciated. Okay, but the Gen X tends to have more equity in their homes. They also tend to have a higher lifetime earnings than the baby boomers before them. Another thing that may, and I'm using may real cautiously here, inheritance may offset some of these financial negatives for Gen X. Now, having said that, I'm early Gen X, and my parents are still fairly young. I don't anticipate inheritance until pretty much I'm probably ready to move out of the area. The inheritance may offset it, but I think the beneficiary of the baby boomer inheritance is going to be the next generation for the most part, which are the millennials coming in. The next little positive for the Gen Xers, they tend to move more. So they had to move for jobs. When you move away from your hometown, you have less attachment to that hometown. So when they're getting ready to retire, they're not having to worry about, hey, we've lived here for 30 years. This is where all our friends and family are. Should we move or not? That objection goes out the window, again, in general, for Gen Xers. An earlier point that I made is that this next generation coming up is most likely going to be delaying their retirement a little bit because of uncertainty, because they don't have pensions, and they just need to figure out financially how to make this work for them. Okay? Now, let's look at the effect of a delayed retirement as a whole. Okay? They're going to move later, which means that when they get to the villages, since they moved here 5 years later, they're pretty much still going to move out based on a compelling event, usually centered around health, probably on average the same time that the boomers did. In other words, there'll just be a faster turnover. Okay. So just a quick little example, if 30% of the next generation decide to delay their retirement for 5 years, the average stay in a retirement community is going to drop from 20 years to about 18.5 years, which is an 8% decrease. That means we need 8% more buyers. So as you can see, there's a little bit of a nervousness when it comes just to the straight numbers. You're going to need more buyers because you're going to have higher turnover. You're going to have more people moving out from the baby boomer generation, fewer retirees moving into, and fewer retirees moving into retirement communities. So there may be an effect as we go forward here. Gen X also has a different lifestyle. They're the first generation that was heavily impacted by the internet. Right? They get influenced more, they travel more. Okay? They tend to be a little bit less social. Just a quick example, 30 years ago, you walked into a restaurant after work and you couldn't move in the bar. Happy hour, that's how people socialize. Now people get done with work, they race home, get online, and that's where they're socializing. So the Gen Xers tend to be a little bit more independent. The boomers tended to be a little bit more organized in their communities. Okay, so just the lifestyle differences. Now the villages, I believe, recognizes this. As you go further south into the newer communities, you do see that they are catering to that more active lifestyle versus, the boomers. I have this again. Why does this matter? Okay, in a large community, small changes matter. Okay? We are going to have pressures on the supply side. As the baby boomers age, people are going to move out. And we're going to have pressures on the demand side. Smaller generation, fewer people moving in. Okay, so again, the villages is in a unique position because of its size. They can scale up and down new construction. Okay. Whether they do so, that remains to be seen. I know during 2008 and 2009, that developer at that time recognized that the market took a dramatic downturn and they slowed down production a little bit. They offered more incentives rather than lowering price on homes. So they reacted to the changing market at that point. And again, hopefully if we see a change in market in the villages, that the developer decides to slow down development just a little bit. The net effect, you're going to have a smaller generation coming in, which is a negative. You're going to be later retirement, which is a negative. more mobile, which is a positive. And we're going to experience more turnover from the baby boomers coming in. Okay, still strong in the wealth side. So there is still money there. There's still money to invest in the villages. So what is the net effect is that it's still going to continue to grow, okay, but it's going to grow much slower than it has, which I believe is actually a good thing. Okay? So it's going to look something like this. You know, when the boomers were in force, the villages was growing. And at a certain point, I think you're going to just see slower growth as the Gen Xers hit the retirement market. So let's bottom line this thing. Okay? We're not going to see a collapse, but we're also not going to see endless growth. Okay? Growth is going to have to slow down a little bit. What we're going to see is change. Okay? Change in how retirement communities look, how retirement communities service the next generation, as well, again, a slower growth in my opinion. I'm going to take this opportunity to summarize the entire series, Is the Villages Collapsing? In the first video, we discuss all the negative videos that are out there. Just know that most of those videos are there for an agenda, whether it's another agent who is trying to slow down the villages so people go down more towards Sarasota or to any other retirement community, to Adele Webb as an example. We're not sure who are behind all of these videos. Most of the claims in these videos are either completely false or misleading. There are some of the claims that have a little bit of truth to them, but you really got to understand what they're actually trying to say. Again, there's an agenda there. The next video we talked about the rapid growth in this area, and we hear this a lot, is this going to ruin the villages? It's growing so fast. Well, the villages has to continue to grow because they're such an integral part of the local economy, and new home construction is a very big portion of the village's business. So they have to continue to grow. Some people don't like how crowded it is, but it's that Yogi Berra quote, no one goes there anymore because it's too crowded. Okay? So it is getting crowded, which means it's popular. Okay? So it is continuing to grow. Now, the biggest threat, in my opinion, to the villages or all of retirement communities is going to be this shifting demographic. You're going to have the aging baby boomers who are about to get to the point where they're going to start moving on to the next stage. Again, assisted living, moving back closer to family, up home for help and support. That wave of people is going to start putting their homes on the market. At the very same time, the next generation coming in is a little bit smaller. Okay, so I don't think it's going to completely hurt the villages because I think they're one of the strongest retirement communities in the world. Okay, but just know that there might be a little bit of risk there. Okay, well, I hope you found this series informative. If you did, please consider subscribing to my channel. Okay. Also, if you like this video, please hit like. Again, if you like a copy of my free 42-page guide, Buying and Selling a Home in the Villages, or a copy of my cost of living / budgeting tool, you can email me right here at davemontysales@gmail.com, and I'll send you out your copies. I hope you found this series informative. I hope to see you around the villages. Take care.